Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, I'd like to call the Village Council Budget Work Session to order. March 12, 2019 is now 5:33 PM. First call to order, that's what I just did. Second is adoption of the agenda. There's really, I assume, no changes other than discussing budget items, so.
Just a quick question. I don't want to throw a monkey wrench at work. One of the last meetings or 2 meetings ago, we had basically the same thing, and we said we didn't have a quorum.
There was an interpretation of the ordinance, or of the statute,
Right, so.
that I think is
Wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Okay, so we do have a quorum.
Do you have a quorum?
I don't wanna
Council
say we're having
members-
a meeting without a quorum.
Okay, council members missing are Ms. Scoot and Robert Epps at this time. All right, so we confirm we do have a quorum, and so I'm going to turn it over to you, Christina, or who am I turning it over to?
Did you adopt the agenda?
Okay, I'll need a motion to adopt the agenda. There is nothing on the agenda other than budget discussion, right? Because it doesn't have it on there.
So moved.
Okay.
Budget work session, okay. All's in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
So I want to start off by just highlighting a few things that we've done over this last year as far as accomplishments. I can't take credit for all of it, but these are just some of the things that we've actually got completed or in the works, so y'all can kind of see some of the things we've been working on. What I just passed out was the CIP, which y'all have basically already seen from the last retreat session that we had.
Was I supposed to get two?
Barbie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it, yeah. So I don't know if you want to go through and just read those, but you don't have to. I just wanted to pass it out to you all so you had kind of some of our accomplishments that we've had, and may have forgotten some of them. It's some of the things that I remembered over the course of the year. We can reference that back. But a couple of things I wanted to point out is, staff has worked hard on all of these things, and so we've actually in a really good position this year where we've got adequate staffing, we've got a lot of projects done. This year we entered I say this year is in 2019, we've entered the roads business. We actually have coordinated over 6 miles of resurfacing at this moment in time, moving forward into another set of mileage to be done in this year. Scroll down to the bottom, and the annexation of over 16 parcels, which takes a lot of time. That's over $7.6 million in total valuation that's added onto our valuation docket. And then down at the bottom, through our fiscal responsibility, we have put back around $75,000 into the fund balance from this previous budget year. So unless y'all have any questions about those off the cusp, these will be some of the items that we add into our budget message, just so y'all have it.
You said 35,000 back to the fund balance.
75.
Oh, 75. Sorry, Mike.
All right, give me a second just to kind of.
What's the partnership to complete the village
So that is, it's not really a partnership, I just dubbed it as that, but Toll Brothers is actually doing the construction of the trail. So we didn't actually pay for it, they're just
Right.
doing it to our standards. That should be nearing completion. I know they were waiting on the rain to finish for the completion of that trail. Any questions, comments? Are you still reading it? Take notes from here.
Yeah, I'm just finishing up. All this well, I just want to, because we don't get to see stuff like this and stuff, so it's kind of nice, especially since we were under the fire of you guys being pressured to produce tons of documents at the beginning of the year. Staff was under that, as well as attorneys and stuff like that, by request for public records. So, but that's hindered us a lot. So it's good to kind of see what we have been doing. So very
Yeah,
good.
and I didn't include a lot of the day-to-day activities that we do. So this list is not all-encompassing. I just wanted to kind of point out some of the positive things, some of the things that we've been working towards, so y'all can kind of see a snapshot of some of the accomplishments that we can kind of pat our backs on.
Okay. All right.
So the next, any questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay.
Great job.
So the next handout was the CIP plan. Staff worked really hard on getting this done, and the PRG board, so we have to thank them for their contributions here. My intent, and just so y'all know, Chris and I actually have the budget balanced as of this afternoon. So my intent for the discussion today was for us to talk about the CIP. The budget is balanced based on a few different assumptions that you'll see tonight. In tonight's meeting, we have the road resurfacing schedule. So we are assuming that y'all are gonna move from this 4-year plan to more of an 8-year plan. So we made that assumption in our budget. We also carried out the full staff as we have now. No major changes in the budget as we've got it presented, with the exception of where do y'all want to spend some of the money that we freed up to get some of these projects done. So we have looked at this and basically made the assumption that we think that everyone is on board with the fiscal year 1920. So that's kind of where I wanted to focus our discussion and see what projects y'all had in mind, see if y'all are in agreement with what's proposed here, and then just kind of go from there. So if y'all are okay with that strategy, we'll move forward with that discussion. So in fiscal, if you look at the first page, did you want to say something, please? Okay. Just feel free to interject if you need to. In the first year, fiscal year 1920, and again, this is a 5-year plan, so we're basically projecting out the projects over the next 5 years. This is not a set in stone document. We can change it every year. We can change it once it's adopted. It just gives us the kind of guidance to prepare the budget together. So in the first year, we pretty much said the tree removal of the Eford Park is actually necessary for a safety standard, which is estimated around $14,000. There's been discussion of this lakeside corridor, and if you scroll to the page that, it's actually the 3rd page on the back side. It says Lakeside Corridor. It actually gives you a brief description of the project. And it kind of tells you the outlay of where the money's being spent. So that
3rd from the back?
It's actually,
No,
it's
third
the,
from the
it's the
front,
actual
Joe.
report.
Oh, 3rd from the front?
Yep.
Okay,
On the back. It's the 3rd
But
page.
it's on the back.
On the back
Great.
of the 3rd page.
gotcha.
So these basically, the numbers here are backed up with the information in the back here. The $25,000 that you see in next year's budget for the Lakeside Corridor is for a picnic shelter.
Okay.
So 3 pages in on the back.
Yeah.
One more page.
No?
What's 3 pages? Oh, you mean 3 pages, maybe on this corner. Must be 3 pages of this section.
Should say Lakeside Corridor. No, hang on a second.
It's the 3rd page, but it's on
Yeah,
the
it's-
back side of
it's
the
not-
third
that's
page.
not-
Hang on, this is, he's got, take this one.
Is that the wrong one?
Well, this one's mine actually, isn't it? Do I have notes on this one or does it matter? Right here. He's got the Greenway one. Greenway. It didn't print the first couple sheets, it looks like. He's missing the total page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can
So-
share.
Yeah, here it is
We're
right
good.
here, I'm sorry.
I got
Let
it.
me catch you
I've got an
up.
extra one, Joe.
Tree, there's 25,000.
But here's the specifics on it,
Okay.
on mine.
Sorry about that.
So this is at the park where the lake is. Lakeside Corridor makeover. Is that where the house was?
Yep.
I think they said the foundation, or the asphalt was still there, the slab. They were
Yep.
just basically gonna build it off of that, so it would really just be the construction of the material itself and not the slab.
And what are they planning?
They were planning that in 1920.
To do what on top?
Picnic shelter.
Okay.
And then 2 years later, they're gonna plan the bathroom, and then the year after that, they're gonna build the bathroom. Hopefully get some money from the state for that.
Another bathroom?
Towards the picnic shelter. They wanted to have a bathroom in that area. So in the Tullamore, the next project would be, going back to the front page, would be the Tullamore parking lot project, which would be not next year, but the following year. Playground replacement, we've slated that for 23, 24. We knew it was a project that potentially may be looming out there. We may push it back further, we may pull it back greater than that, or sooner than that. It's just something that we need to start planning for. Roundabout hardscape, and/or landscape. This is something that both Cancel and PRG has discussed, so we just kind of put some numbers in for there. 10,000 may not be enough, but it, at least start the project, and we can continuously put money in.
And that's for both?
Yes, and these numbers are pretty unsubstantiated. We just pretty much threw guesses at it. So we don't have any real hardcore evidence to say it's gonna cost 10,000 per roundabout.
So we don't even have water there yet, right? We just
Correct.
have a line. So you gotta get the infrastructure in there first,
Yep.
and then worry about what you can plant.
We could, basically what we could do with that is we could come back, if Cancel is okay with putting $10,000 in for that project, we could come back, make plans to solidify what that would be, involve the PRG board in that, and just whatever we do is in the realm of $10,000 for this year. And we can visit it later next year and put more money into it if we see that it's gonna cost more, but
Okay?
wayfinding signs, we knew that that's something that may be out there at some point in time, so we just kind of put that in a placeholder over the next couple of years, nothing for next year.
These are signs for the trails,
That would be wayfinding signs for the community.
for the community.
Like when you're coming into Marvin, like apparently Union County is doing some like big rebranding thing and they're gonna help us in some point.
Union County Parks and Recreation is doing some type of study to do wayfinding. It's like a community vision wayfinding, where each municipality would put in a portion for their signs. So they're doing all the work for the planning and all that stuff. We don't have to pay anything for it. We just need to pay for the signs once
So
they.
just saying, entering Village of Mo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Village of Marvin, the Marvin Ever Park is this way. Yeah.
Village Hall this way.
Marvin
Like,
Elementary
The
School
town I
this
came from,
way.
they did, you talking about like routes or just things of
Just-
interest?
Things
Just
of
things of
interest.
interest. And we don't have a lot, so it's not gonna cost a whole lot.
Sort of like what Waxhaw has.
Yeah.
If you head down into Waxhaw, like on Waxhaw
Direct
Road,
them to the park that they can't use.
different places.
Most places will have like courthouse this way, food shop,
Right.
food shopping this way. Ours would say Village Hall.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have a whole lot.
We don't have anything right
I
now.
was just saying, because the signs that say Marvin's, entering Village of Marvin and Marvin
Yeah.
Village, I mean, you could drive down the road 20 feet, you're in a different, you're out of
I could
Village
see if
again.
we ever went
It's
to like a historic district, like saying Marvin Historic District, but that's a whole game changer from the whole land use plan and stuff. But there's really nothing, because we're not offering our park.
It kind of goes back to your discussion that you had the other day about where do you enter and exit? It's a place of community, and trying to establish that for people that come through.
Maybe the border lines, the
Yeah.
boundaries, okay.
And that's something we can talk about later. I mean, we haven't put it in for next year. We just knew that it may be something that comes up, so we're just trying to put it as a placeholder.
Okay.
Reoccurring park needs, basically, we don't actually have not planned, I should say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't really planned for the replacement of a lawnmower or some type of equipment that we need. So we're just putting this in here for purposes of making sure we continuously plan for those things.
So just kind of on that subject and stuff. DOT is responsible for both roundabouts and the lane in between it with the thing. They're gonna be cutting that until we decide what we do, and then,
Yes, and from my experience, DOT standards as far as maintenance is nowhere gonna be near what ours are. So we may eventually want to,
we may have to have a line item for that roundabouts as far
Yes.
as taking care of that. Because especially if we're gonna invest thousands of dollars. I don't know what you can and can't put in there per DOT, because they're very particular about the kind of trees or.
PRG's looking into it.
Okay.
They're working on that.
Good.
but it is a good point, because this year, we will see the standard of DOT.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure it's
Trust me,
gonna be
it's,
acceptable
yeah.
to us.
I mean, you can see Ray Road.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the saying goes,
In the middle of it.
if it doesn't meet your standards, just lower your standards and it'll be fine.
What I've seen in the past, though, this is something that we could definitely entertain. What I've seen in the past is they will pay a municipality a stipend to do it themselves, and then they just
Right.
absorb it in-house.
Yeah.
So,
Which must be what Charlotte does, because if you go down Ray Road, as soon as it goes into Charlotte, the grass is all cut and everything, and the other side, it's 2 feet tall.
Yeah.
But ideally, and I know this sounds crazy, but we own roundabout to roundabout and in between, because then you can control the speed that everybody complains about. And it's that little town feel that controls how fast people can go in there, but that's a big budget item.
so there's been discussion about a park vehicle, equipment, storage building, and all that's very conceptual in nature, so we don't even know where that's going. So I put that out way in the future, like 5 years and beyond. So at some point, we may need it. Do we need it today? I don't know. We just put that in there as a placeholder in case that discussion comes up. It's out there as,
So I would argue we don't need it today because we happen to have a person who is at the park that has a pickup truck that can utilize it and can tow things around. But that's not always, I'm not saying his job's going away, but I'm just saying that we need to really think about having some sort of vehicle that's not a personal vehicle that he's using to haul all this stuff around. Because from an insurance standpoint, I would imagine that can change things too. If it's, so 5 years, I'm saying within 5 years, we should have something established, because as we do these trails and have to get equipment to those trails, we're hoping that he's available to use his own vehicle to.
yeah, and we can always, like I said, we can always change this CIP. I just knew that it was something that we may at some point need to talk about. So we put it in here. We can always move it around later.
Okay.
Really, for this year, we're only focused on the 1920.
Yep.
But just keep in mind that these things are being put in here as placeholders.
Yep.
So if you see something that you know has been discussed and we don't have it included here, just let me know so we can add that in at a later date.
Okay.
Dog park, I'm really not 100% sure where this came from. I know the conceptual idea has been thrown out, so we just kind of put it in there as a future idea. May happen,
It's
may
been
not
mentioned
happen.
numerous times where the horses used to be, where the fences are, where the Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts had little things there, or something like there was a place to release your dog, so.
And we didn't put a lot of information about background information on some of these things with the
Okay.
numbers. This is really, like, if they're far out there, we knew that we would eventually at some point receive direction from council to either pursue it or not. So we didn't really spend a whole lot of time actually getting good estimates on these things.
Okay.
Greenways Master Plan, Parks and Greenways Master Plan, this is something that the PRG board has kind of been screaming to y'all over the last couple of meetings, is that they need to renew this plan. I think it's 10 years old at this moment in time. So we've got that in there from a rewrite. I don't think it's actually going to cost $40,000 once we go out and RFP it, but I just put that in there as a potential that it could be that. That is in for next year, so we did put that into the CIP for
When
next
were
year.
they planning on doing that? Having that?
They were asking to get it done next year, so they would do it in next year's budget. Say
Do
again?
they have a group in mind to do it?
They have the people who did the initial master plan, they've contacted them and got a quote from them, and I think this is where the 40,000 came from, but I think we can find somebody to do it cheaper.
I think, the only thing I see, the issue we had, if I'm not mistaken, with the original master plan was they put trails and stuff where people didn't want them, and then we had a big to-do with a couple of the developments, that they had planted trails going through their backyards. And so I think somehow we gotta have somebody take a look at that before, not just tell them to do what they want.
Okay.
We're gonna have to-
So this would be a complete public participation process, and it would take, a couple months to do, so it would be the course of
Yeah, definitely.
3 to 6 months. They would get it done and involve us in the process, and
Yeah,
then
we definitely need
council
the
would
public
approve it.
involvement too, so we could try to avoid having a master plan that we don't have to,
Yeah,
So-
that seems a little steep, but I agree.
So that's in there, as we felt was a desire of council, so that's there. And that's all Parks and Rec stuff. So there's nothing else Parks and Rec related except for those things. The next set is administration, as you see here. The only thing that we have in there for next year is a UDO, which is a Unified Development Ordinance. And I've put in here $40,000. It could potentially be less than that, because really all we're doing is cleaning up some of our existing ordinances, and just going through and just that process.
Can I go back to Parks and Rec stuff?
Mhm.
There's no trails on here.
We'll get to that in just a second. We have a
Okay.
separate one for it.
Okay. Okay, I'm good.
The master
I
plan
just know that it's not
and
brought up.
unified development ordinance, so between those, I'm sure it's gonna be a lot less than 60 though.
Yeah, I'm sure it
I hope.
is. Yeah.
I mean-
didn't we pay, was that the attorney before we?
Kevin?
Kevin, didn't we pay Kevin basically to do a
Mm-hmm,
kind of?
Rewrite of all our ordinances, period.
mm-hmm.
Clean it up. He spent $40,000. It's out there.
No, I'm saying he spent 40,000 at that time, so.
We did. So it's there. It just got redlined,
Okay. I
but
don't know.
never approved. But it was very confusing, and that was the reason we were going. So that has been one of my top 10 things when the last election occurred, that's what we needed to do, is clean that up. And I saw you guys have a nice big board but you may be creating a lot more for yourself when it's already been done, and it's just a matter of
So, and I don't know what has been done and what hasn't been done and what's changed since then and what hasn't
You
changed.
should have that
so that's-
document though.
But
somewhere.
it's in there, and if we can find a group to do it, that we can give that to them as a reference and potentially save us some money. So, that's in there. We've had discussion about a pedestrian refuge near Innisbrook area on Marvin Road. That's in here for next year. Whether it happens, we don't know. That's just something that we've heard thrown out there.
Just like a resting stop?
To get from the path in front of Innisbrook across to the path that goes over to Woodcliff, which would go over to Firethorn, is what PRG is looking at. So it's like it's kind of like the refuge that they just built over here on
But
Marvin
it's a
School
crossing
Road.
on
That's right.
Marvin.
It's a crossing with a little island in the middle.
It's a cement island is what it is.
Yes.
You do need to slow that road down because
Yeah.
the guy passed
Have we
me.
got the traffic study back yet?
No, we haven't.
I had a guy pass me 70 miles an hour.
Passed you?
Passed me because I wasn't going fast enough on the.
And then the last three items are really conceptual that we've heard in conversation. We don't know if they're actually projects y'all wish to pursue. Farmers market, amphitheater, and sidewalks to school. We just kind of threw some numbers in there. They're really unsubstantiated numbers. We're just guessing at this. If it's something that happens 3 or 4 years down the road, it's in there as a placeholder. And then, any questions on admin?
Nope.
Okay. And then the last one you'll see is a Greenway supplement. We have a separate Greenway plan specifically as PRG is kind of outlined in that Excel sheet that they show you all the time. We've got one prepared in here, and we'll get to that in just a second. But basically, next year, they're asking for a lot of money that exceeds the budget that they have. In order for us to go through with their plan, y'all have to supplement $30,000 from general fund to their capital project. That is not something that I'm recommending this year, so we did not put that in the budget. So just letting y'all know.
So all this other stuff's in the budget, this one just is not.
That's correct, yep. So everything that you see here, minus the Greenway supplement, is what we included in the budget,
Okay.
to balance the budget, basically. So all of those projects we would get done in next year's fiscal year. Any comments?
Okay.
And the second page just highlights the Parks and Recreation projects only.
And
So
then we break it down.
break it down, go to the
Do
next
that, the
which
admin,
is-
we break it down.
where's the Greenway one?
Oh, the green light one's the third one. It's toward the back.
Okay, go towards the back.
There.
There you go.
Yeah.
You see the page in the middle that starts as this?
Keep going, Joe.
I was just reading, I'm sorry.
So if you don't see a whole lot of documentation, it's because we didn't know if it was of interest.
There it is.
So we're not gonna go through all the attachments here because y'all have heard this several times from PRG. Basically, this is the only sheet y'all need to look at for PRG Greenways. And if you look at fiscal year 1920, the very bottom, they're asking for $245,000. Chris, I think we have that supplement wrong. It's in here at 42.
No, 42 is the fee.
Oh, okay. So they're asking for 203,000. They currently have the 245,000 to pick from, which the difference there is that $30,000 supplement that you see, which we're not recommending.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
So you'll see,
Yeah, I
that's
got
their
that.
total number.
Yeah, but that's their fee in lieu.
Mhm.
And so then they're asking for this addition, so they've got 30,000 less than that in their budget?
Yes, that would be the difference that they're asking for to accomplish all those projects next year.
So,
So
20, so what are they asking for next year? What's the
they're
number?
asking for 203.
239, okay.
And they only have about 170, roughly, like, give or take, right?
203 minus 30.
Right,
Right.
yeah. Now, like, one thing I was gonna say, I'll point out here, is I'm seeing that she's got the Joe Carr Road, Marvin Creek Elysian Field, Section E of the loop in next year's budget. We've been helping her do some research, and we do not believe that there are any easements on that section. So it may be that that's not a project that's going to be done next year. So some of these things may have to get pushed to a future year.
Well,
There's
and
no
then,
easements?
Not on that last section of the loop, along Joe Car Road, the one that's not been done, it's not done because there's no easements.
So we may have to go into the DOT right away.
Or we may have to just petition the homeowners and try and get the easements, which is what we did on the other side.
Which part, the part that's west of Eps's property?
Yes, in between where the loop ends now and
No,
his
east.
property. Going toward
East towards Marvin
Firethorn.
Creek.
Go towards Fire.
Going towards
Not towards
Firethorn.
Marvin Creek, because we have to.
Yes, going towards Marvin Creek.
Well, okay, across, on the side where the loop is now on Marvin Creek, okay? The loop ends at Wheatfield,
Okay,
okay? Between Wheatfield and Elysian Fields, we could not find any easements from those property owners.
Marvin Creek, yeah, the people that backed it didn't want
Right.
US easements.
Their land, it looks like their land goes all the way to the road, and there are no easements.
Is there DOT right away?
I'm not, I would imagine some, I don't know, what, if we can build in it or not. But anyway, my point is, there's, that was a hope of theirs. They assumed there were easements when they put this together, but, we've since found that we don't think they are.
So my recommendation for this is we're obviously, well, I assume we're not gonna give them the $30,000 supplement, is my assumption. So with that assumption being in place, we don't approve this part of the plan, ask them to go back and look at it and revise it depending on, what they discover in this information here.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, I know that they've got the Innisbrook on there section, which, we have to wait till the sewer's done. And I mean, I know that they're saying, oh, it'll be done by the end of the year, maybe beginning of next year? No? What are you saying?
I checked with Union County Public Works, and it's after that.
Oh.
It's not gonna be done by June,
We just had a meeting with them.
Not this June, but not
Yeah.
next June.
maybe next June.
were you talking about the storm drains and?
No, they're redoing the sewer line all up Marvin Road. So they're gonna rip up, like, all in front of Innisbrook. So there's 0 point in
Right.
planning that. At the PRG meeting, they were talking about doing this in, like, the
Yeah.
spring.
Why would they?
That's, okay.
Okay.
So that
that's
needs
gonna
to
on
be
hold.
readdressed.
They need to look at this, I think, in my opinion, and go back and, review it and revise it before you take action on it. And I'm not asking for any action tonight. The intent is just for y'all to look at it, if you're okay with it. I would like y'all to solidify the CIP maybe at the work session or a subsequent meeting so that we have this as a planning document. And then we can come back later and,
Do we not do that stuff here?
no, we're not gonna do it here,
Oh,
the CIP.
So they need to shed about $30,000 off of this, is what you're saying?
Yeah, they do, but if they're gonna be moving like the Joe Kerr to next year, then they don't.
Right.
So it's kind of a moot point.
But I mean, Innisbrook's not gonna be ready to be
Yeah.
done in the
Also
next
true.
fiscal, I mean,
Between Joe Carr and Innsbruck, yeah, it's $200,000.
One of the problems that they have in this plan, and I need to communicate this to Mary Site, is that they have, like I said earlier, they have $245,000 plus, or minus the 40, they have the $200,000. They're making the assumption that those numbers that you see in 2021, 21, 22, all those
are all
numbers,
gonna be the same then.
well, they're making the assumption that that's money that we're gonna give them from general fund, because there's no more money after that. So that money from here over, the 2021 over, has to come from somewhere.
Oh, and because their budget's gone. Okay.
They have no more capital budget. So they're making the assumption that either we're gonna give them that in general fund, or they're gonna find grants or other ways of obtaining that money. So that's something that they need to keep into consideration.
Yeah, okay.
I think, a little bit of money is great, but I just don't know if we can afford $200,000 every few years, every year, basically.
Well, especially if we have to start buying easements and,
So in concept, I know the entire board's not here, but, in concept, I'd like to have full discussion about these 1920 projects and make sure everybody's on board with what's slated for 1920, because that's gonna make our next discussion for budget so much easier. Chris and I have worked pretty hard on preparing,
I don't understand what you just said. What did you just say?
so if
You need to get on board.
I'm on board.
if we're okay with this plan as presented for 1920,
Yeah,
then our budget is pretty much done.
okay.
Because-
I'm on board with this. I just don't wanna have to do this the next two budget
Yeah.
meetings because people aren't here. So, I mean, I'm good with this. I don't think we need to do the 30,000. question, the 40,000 for the master plan this year, but, you know, if they really need to do it,
So what we're passing out now is the budget that's actually balanced. If you recall, we actually changed the format up this year, so you're not going to see all those schedules that you saw last year. But this encompasses everything in the document in a shorter version, but it has all the same information. So we can go through line by line. We can do it however you want, but basically we have a total revenues of 1.2 with total expenditures matching up to the same exact amount, 1.2. We still have a $50,000 contingency in there. And we've got the expenditures slated out per department. So if you see in the middle, it says expenditures, general government, planning and zoning, public safety, culture and recreation, and transportation. So we've tried to segment it out per department, so you're knowing, roughly how much you're spending per department. I can keep going, or I can wait for y'all to ask questions, or.
what is transportation, the roads?
Mhm.
So behind the cover sheet, there's a separate sheet for each of those departmental
Mhm.
budgets, so you can see what's included in there.
So if y'all want to turn to page 2, it goes over all your revenues and the sources and how we're getting those. Obviously, the main source of revenue for us is ad valorem taxes at approximately $610,000. Then we have the unrestricted intergovernmental transfers, which is the beer and wine tax, sales tax, local option tax. Restricted intergovernmental, which is your PAL bill. That money has to be spent towards only allowable PAL bill expenses. You have your permits and fees. And then sales tax and other services. Or, I'm sorry, sales and other services.
What is investment earnings?
That's the money that we get on interest on our bank account.
Oh, so we had 11,000?
If you want to turn the page, we're going to get into expenditures. Y'all just stop me at any point in time if you have questions. So you go over to the salaries and employee benefits. You have everyone highlighted there in their salary.
But
This
now,
is-
can I point out, this is general government, so there are salaries for staff in other departments. So planning and zoning would have the salaries for the planner and the zoning administrator, and then culture and recreation has the park salaries.
So when you see the estimated actuals here that says 282, we actually took out just these positions. So you can actually compare apples to apples. So you'll also note in the very top portion it says bonus/merit pay increases. This is a year that council has slated in the past with I think 3% interest and increase in salary. So this is a 3% increase. And I think there's a general policy that y'all have
Yeah, no,
where you do 3% bonus, 3% increase in salary every other year.
600.
We alternate it, yeah. One
No, not
one
that
time's
far.
it's a bonus, a form of a bonus, the other it's
Like
an
right,
increase.
up a little bit more, like right there.
yeah, I see.
So this is a 3% increase in salary for all staff in general government, including council. So that would be an increase for all of those stipends for all boards, council, and staff.
So this is a pay increase, not a
Correct.
bonus.
Correct.
Last year was a bonus.
Good pay increase?
We put it in there, we could always pull it back out.
Huh?
I treated y'all just as any other person, so we just put it in there as a total, we can pull it back out.
Oh, what do we do?
Our stipends.
We put cancel into the total equation for the increase in 3%.
I don't really see a need for
I
that.
don't either.
That's 5,000. I don't know if you do, Nick. I mean, we had another councilman vote himself a raise last time he was in, so.
Okay, we can always retract that. It's in there now. We can definitely pull that out.
I don't think we need it for council or boards.
Almost $5,000.
I think that's should be for staff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather give it to staff too.
Yeah.
Go down the list. There's really no other differences from the previous year as far as nothing that would be a change other than just a change in percentages.
The one thing that's in here though is the, are you up in the
Just in
salary
the
section?
salaries,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I will point out, there is a big, an increase that is a little bit substantial. On the North Carolina Retirement Plan, which we are statutorily required to participate in, they raised the rates again this year, like they do a 5-year projected raises to make sure that they can fund the retirement, and it went from 7.75 to 8.95, which is a pretty substantial increase in 1 year. And that's a village expense.
That will be an expense that goes up for the next 4 years. They just recently released something. I think it's going up to 11% over the
Yeah,
next
like-
few years.
Mhm.
So you will see that increase every year.
I'm saying, well, we have enough, we can.
You can't do anything about it, but I'm just pointing out that, you know, when you look at the numbers, that's, you know, $2,000 over the prior year.
So other than that on salaries and benefits, any questions? Okay, moving on to professional services. I did actually up the legal slightly. We had estimated, I think, 2,500, 3,000 a month in the previous budget. I just went ahead and put it at 5,000. We can always scale it back, but.
So
better-
right now it's
better
in
be
there
safe
at
than
5
sorry.
and not 3?
Correct.
Because it says 3.
3 is the amount of the retainer, which is $250 a month. We pay
Oh,
that.
so the 60 is with the 5, I got it.
Yeah. We did include the website redesign in here at 20,000. Yay. So that's in here. We've also, as you'll see in your agenda packets that we're going to discuss later on tonight, there's an increase in our audit for the next year. That is included in here.
I saw that.
The computer
Yeah.
consultant, say again?
The audit's almost double, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
The computer consultant remained pretty much the same. We did do an increase based on trends.
So with the auditor, that going up that much in 1 year, they're claiming, I read that they did not account for a bunch of things. That's why there's a lot of work they had to do. So
And it took forever for them to get information.
And we have a potential plan to address some changes in that, so we can talk about that if you can wait on the meeting date, or the meeting time, we can talk about that in more detail.
Okay.
Transcription services, we actually just put I put a placeholder in here. I don't think that we're gonna need it, but I just put it in here for purposes of having something in there. Personnel policy rewrite, we are in desperate need of rewriting our personnel policy. I don't know how much it's gonna cost. I put $5,000 in there. I think that'll be good to cover that, just to bring us up into compliance with current law, basically.
Okay.
would we just, does it make sense to pull from another community or?
I would have somebody do it ourselves. I mean, because we're unique. I mean, we could definitely pull it from Laxall or Weddington, but they don't know our unique needs. So I would personally like for us to see somebody do it for us individually, but I mean, we could do whatever council desires for us to do. It's in there, and we've got it budgeted for that, and it's balanced. So if we want to pull it out, that's totally fine. Membership dues and fees, they are pretty much stable. Actually, the City Managers Association, the ICMA, was actually under budgeted last year. Luckily, to Village of Marvin's benefit, Albemarle picked up my tab last year, so. We calculated it out, and that's about how much it is per year. So there's no real changes there. Obviously, the elections are gonna be in this year's budget.
Dang, you upped the council retreat at $5,000?
I did. You know, we can always take that down, but I figured we could have some team building exercises, maybe have a consultant come in and do, help us with that. So that's why that's in there as an increase. We can always take it down. I did increase travel and training just because, you know, we do have additional staff on board, myself included, and I've neglected to go to some of these ICMA conferences that I'm actually required to go to. So I did increase that slightly.
And can I point out, in these categories here, the other operating and the dues, there are some expenses that are based on estimates that we get from someone else, like outside organizations, and especially on our insurance renewals. So we haven't gotten those renewals yet. It's very early in the process. So over the next month to month and a half, hopefully we'll be getting some of that information. And I tried to project increases into here, but the actual numbers may change slightly from what you see.
You'll see the administrator's discretionary funds are at $14,788, which is an odd number. We basically had $5,000 in there. We had an excess of $9,000 and $788. We just plugged it in there as to balance the budget. So that is an area where we could definitely move it around. We were just trying to spend the 9,000 on something.
And that might make up for like, when we get actual insurance quotes and things like that.
Okay. We did up meals just slightly and up mileage just slightly. Moving over to the second page, everything's pretty stable as far as expenditures, with the exception of one thing. You'll see agenda formatting software. This is something that is a conceptual idea where we could potentially change the way we're doing our agenda process to make it a little easier so we can search records a little bit more easier, more user-friendly. Something that we've got in there, we can either do it or not do it. We can always pull it out. If you look at, I think Waxhaw has one. I know Albemarle has it because we had it when I was there. But if you get some time to look at their agenda formats, it's much easier to navigate through.
Waxaw and who?
Albemarle. There's also a placeholder in there for just miscellaneous software that comes up. Like the other day, we were talking about getting some software for creating flyers for these events that we're having. So some, stuff comes up occasionally, and we want to have the ability to just buy anything that would be relevant to carrying out the mission here.
What's rounding?
Rounding was just a placeholder. Or sometimes what happens is, like the maid service, for example, halfway through the year, it increases slightly.
Okay.
And we don't have enough. So it was called rounding in the past. I've just never changed it.
Any questions on general government, the other? Nope. Okay, so occupancy, we have made the assumption that we're going to be in the current place of Village Hall for the next 12 months, with construction and all that stuff. So that assumption reflects the proposed rent that we have here. We increased the use of fellowship hall just slightly based on the meetings being had here. Everything else remains the same. We did put in replacement of 2 computers as we've traditionally done over the last several years. Moving on to the next page is planning and zoning. Unless y'all have any questions? We do have the full-time planner in here budgeted. Everything is pretty much the same. Zoning assistant,
That's about the same.
why is that one so much higher?
Zoning assistant?
Oh, I see proposed actual, never mind. Okay, it's the same. Yeah, I'm sorry. Health insurance is obviously higher because we now have another full-time staff that we have to pick up. Again, the same to the retirement as well.
The merit pay increase, is that for the planner and the zoning assistant?
Mm-hmm.
Both
Yeah.
of them.
That's the 3%. Engineer is budgeted in just slightly lower. We think we could probably reduce that more, but just to be safe, we've got it in there. Oh, we've got ordinance rewrite in here already. I just noticed that.
Oh, look at that.
So we've got
I
$20,000.
thought we looked for that.
We did.
We didn't. We didn't see it.
So we just have to put that
We found
administrative
20
discretion
grand.
back up 20, huh?
We just-
Just found another 20 grand.
Okay, so we'll put that 20,000 somewhere. You're gonna take a note for that.
Yeah, we looked for that and didn't find it.
Professional service.
We could probably put that in.
Ordinance.
One true,
Right.
right, okay.
Where do you want to put it?
Well, we could probably put it in the roundabout, but that's just an idea. It's me. Codification of ordinances, that's a pretty stable number. Last year we had 6,000, which I don't think we had codified for 2 years, so that number's increased from last year, so we took it back down to a more suitable expectation of cost. We did increase training and travel, obviously, because we have a full-time staff member now that we need to support in training and travel efforts. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is stabilized. I did include a CIP certification, which is the American Planners Certification Process. It's $500 to take the exam. I did include that in here. Do you have a question?
I do eventually, but I'm waiting.
Okay. That's all I
Not
have.
stocking. I was just thinking revenues on the revenue side, I just thought of something that came up, and I'll get to it when you.
Okay. Any questions on planning, zoning?
Nope.
Okay, moving over to public safety. Obviously, we have the contracted services with Union County. We did up it slightly based on just trends that we've seen. We have not received any information from them as far as an increase. We just made the assumption they were going up 10%, which could not be correct. We maintained off-duty traffic control as we stand now with the light tower rental. So everything's pretty much the same there. Any questions?
And the deputies, that assuming that we're gonna stay at one deputy.
Correct, yep.
And this also assumes that the third roundabout would not be done, but, you know, we assumed it for the entire school year again, assuming there'd be no third roundabout finished.
Which is gonna be right, right? Because they're not gonna start it till next summer.
Is that what they said?
Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to the next page is transportation, and this is pretty much just all Powellville. 156,000, we'll get into this discussion a little bit later, but basically what we're assuming here is that we will have no expenditures next year for street resurfacing at all. So that's what that basically assumed. We're gonna put that money into a holding cell for the following year's expenditure. Any questions on that?
So we're gonna do the lights though, right? The runabouts.
I need to talk to you guys about that, which could be the $20,000 discussion.
Okay. All right.
Then the very last page is your Parks and Rec. You'll see the salaries listed there for your park manager, your park maintenance associates, which are your part-time folks, and then your seasonal folks as well. There is an increase for all of them with a 3% reflective of all the other employees. Everything else is pretty stabilized there from previous years. We did increase the events just slightly as far as the expenditures. And then if you'll note in operating expenditures, everything is pretty much the same that we've been doing in years past. General repairs, vehicle, mower repair, gas, fertilizer, all that stuff. We did include, you wanna say something on that, or no?
I was gonna say, we didn't double count UDO, remember, we put the 108 in the budget, and it's here, the 88 is here, and the 20 is.
Oh, that's right.
We didn't double count
So
it,
I don't have that 20,000.
because it's
She
already
just
in the
took the
budget.
20,000 away from us again.
Yeah, it's not double counted.
Okay, that's right, you're
We
right.
forgot our strategy.
Okay, so then you look at the
No,
greenways and
30.
loops.
Did anybody hear that?
85 is the top.
Did you guys hear that?
What?
Christina just took the $20,000
She
away
does
from
that.
us.
Yeah?
Yeah, she
Give
took
it
it away.
and she take it
I
away.
forgot. that we-
Give it.
we
Where did it go this time?
Well, we
She already counted it.
had already counted it in there.
Okay.
So the
We're looking at
greenways,
the wrong line.
where's
So this 88,
Yeah, I was gonna change
860,
jobs.
this 88, 600 is from the CIP. It's taking the CIP money and putting it into the budget.
it's probably, we probably shouldn't put it in greenways and loops. It's park projects in general, but we just put it there as a
Yeah.
reflection of that 88,000 that we have
It's on the
there
front.
is basically everything that's taken from the CIP. So if y'all agree with what's in the CIP for all the parks, that 88 reflects exactly what's in here. It is a little bit confusing that it says greenways and loops. We may need to clean that up, but that's where that number
I'll
comes from.
change the name.
Okay.
That greenways and loops that's in this budget has nothing to do with the other CIP plan that you have in this document here.
Okay. So this is like, okay.
Just for clarity. Any questions on that? So basically, what this boils down to is if y'all change these projects around for parks in the CIP, then that number 88,600 changes, and then we'll just make the changes from that reflective of council's desires.
Okay.
So that is it. That's the budget that's balanced in a nutshell. We don't honestly foresee a whole lot of need for future, a lot of future in-depth budget discussions based on what we have together here, unless there's substantial changes that want to take place or that y'all want to see happen. Pretty straightforward.
Chris, when are you gonna get like all of the final numbers and stuff?
From like insurance quotes and things like
Yeah.
that. It's middle of March right now, probably middle of April to the beginning of May.
Okay, but we're still gonna be on tap to
Yes,
approve
May
this before,
14th.
okay,
Is when our,
okay. So are you trying to say that we don't need 2 more budget meetings, is that what you're trying to say?
Well, we have one more budget meeting scheduled for April 10th, and then the next one is the budget walk session. It's May 14th, which is the day we're supposed to approve the budget.
Okay.
So
So
we
we have
really
2
only
more.
have one meeting before we have the meeting where we approve the budget,
Oh, okay,
technically.
okay. So you guys feel good about that?
We do. I mean, as long as y'all are okay with what we've presented, we feel fine with it. As long as y'all are okay with the CIP as presented. So if there's discrepancies in that, then that's where we need to kind of hang our hat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, the supplemental, I mean, I think they're not gonna need that
Based on
based on,
revisions.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's not something we put in this budget anyways.
This isn't.
We minus that 30
but
out.
this is.
Correct. Everything else minus 30 is what we included.
Now, Joe said he had a question on revenue.
Well,
Revenues.
yeah, revenue side, and this is just something I'm gonna throw out there, because as we get these loops and trails kind of connected and stuff, you're gonna see probably use of golf carts. So, I don't know if most people know this, but if you have a golf cart right now, you're required to have it insured. And most people don't have it insured. We also used to have
Yeah.
a little
You
sticker.
have a permit.
I had a permit, and one of the advantages of having the permit, and this could be an annual cost or whatever, very nominal, but I think a lot of people have golf carts. What I would argue is, there are so many times that you see a golf cart riding down the road and you're not gonna, there's a kid clearly under the age of 16, which again, our law allows golf carts, but you gotta be 16, have a driver's license to drive it. One of the problems is, nobody can identify who that kid is, who that cart is, but you can if it requires a sticker. So I think we need to think about that, and I know it may not go over well because it's government getting more, but what I would say is when we call the officer to
Public safety.
report, it is a public safety issue. We've had numerous incidents where, in fact, a very sad incident happened, which I don't think that the young girl has completely rehabilitated yet, where she lost, she had brain damage because she flew out of a golf cart. So again, I see it constantly in our neighborhood because it's a golf course neighborhood, but I would imagine people use it in other communities to get to their thing, but to somehow identify it or require. So at some point you can just go by, you don't have to take names or anything, all you have to do is get that sticker number that ties it into who did what. You can give that information to law enforcement and they can come by with a warning initially, because there's some people that basically are thumbing their nose with the 16 and under, I'll tell you right now, which is clearly a safety issue. And I'm required to have it insured, so I have it insured just in case I were to hit somebody or something were to happen, so.
Just a question, and maybe, to operate a golf cart on a public street, it doesn't have to be registered and insured?
It does on a public street.
The operator has to have a driver's license?
Driver's license, registration, and insurance.
So if it's gonna be driven on a public street, it would have a license plate?
Yes, it would have a registration plate.
I think we passed a law in Marvin that allows you to utilize a golf cart, but I was told you don't need a registration or plate for it, but it's not allowed on any of the main streets. It can be in your neighborhood, but it can't be along like Marvin Road, Waxaw Marvin Road, any of the main thoroughfares. But I think the ordinance we passed, or the state passed, and we'd have to correct it
Well, I
to
think
make
you have to
sure.
have a local ordinance too.
It is a local ordinance that we have, that we passed it a couple of years ago.
Look at that.
But it identifies that if they're driving in the thing, but still, the rule for the state says, I think, our own ordinance, I believe it is, required to be 16, have a license, and there's a couple, I think it has to be insured too.
I'll double check, I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure.
but we have no registration. We used to have it. I have a little sticker on mine. I don't know, it's just, I think it's something that we should look at. I'm not doing it for revenue source, I'm doing it for more of a safety and where you don't have to confront parents on your own. You can just turn in and say, hey, give them a warning, and if they get,
So-
I mean, I personally think, that if the state requires it, then they should be registered like a regular vehicle, because it's easier for the sheriff than whatever to
But you
identify
can't,
whether it's a,
but you can't get them, I mean, I know this from, because I went through this whole thing about the turn signals. Most of them don't have turn signals, and they're not street ready. That's why they don't allow them on the main streets, but they do allow them on the, not on the sidewalks. They're supposed to be driven on the road.
but it's still a public street. I'm just saying, it's a public street.
Well, they're gonna be our streets eventually.
Still public.
I'll check and see what it says, the state says versus your ordinance.
Okay.
In terms of budget, do y'all, or CIP, do y'all have any other questions, comments, suggestions?
Looks good, good job.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Adjourn it.
Did that on time?
Yeah, you wanna adjourn it?
Yeah, so I need to, need a motion to adjourn the budget work session meeting.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, and then we'll take a
Take a
couple minute
couple
break
break.
before we open up the
Yeah.
next.